You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. Information and communication technology has been recognized as the engine for growth and a source of energy for the social and economic empowerment of any country, especially a third world country. Now, these countries are empowering masses through it as it can prove to be an effective shortcut to higher levels of equity in the emerging global digital networked information economy. But how much has the Nigerian government supported the growth and development of this sector, particularly in the area of software development? Now that the elections have come and gone, how can the new administration make technology a tool of driving economic growth? To shed more light on some of these issues is the president of Institute of Software Practitioners of Nigeria, Dr. Yele Okeremi. Good morning, Mr. Keremy. Thank you very much for joining us on the show, and it's good to have you here.
Thank you, Chile.
All right, looking at what happened during the elections, we had failure of smart cards and so on. What does that say about where we are in terms of technology usage?
Well, you have asked the right question because you used the word usage. So the first thing I want to say is that technology always works where people want it to work. So the word technology itself is just the application of science to achieving everyday activities of human beings. And so you realize that humans still play a very important role in adoption of technology. And so while the technology in its own self might be pure, but because it's a social endeavor, a lot still depends on the people around it. So there are ways we can make things not work. And I'm not saying technology is perfect in the first instance. So, I mean, there are possibilities of failures in technology. So, I mean, we call them, for example, bugs in software. So these are possibilities, and we recognize them. But when bugs arise, there are also remedial actions to take care of a number of those bugs. And bugs can arise as a result of unforeseen or unforeplanned scenarios that arise. But generally speaking, we ask ourselves a question: how long does it take for a technology to mature? I know that we have used the smart card. We used it in 2015, right? Mm-hmm. And we've used it in 2019. That's ample time for technology on its own to work. But the other bits of it is, do people really want it to work? Because these things are not robots, you know. They have to be used by human beings. They are human interactions. So if a situation where people don't want it to work, it's possible to be sabotaged. And then again, when we even talk about the evidences of card reader failures, which you have brought out, we need to really be sure that we have sound evidences. Because I heard on your channel that some people, somebody had come on the channel, I don't remember who the person was, and the card readers were not working. But it turned out that the cards that were presented were not original. So that will definitely not be a failure of the card reader, but a success of the card reader. However, now being presented as though the card reader failed. And that's why I say the social aspects of technology are very, very important.
Okay, so let's look at the role of software developers like yourself in all of this.
Yes. So, well, basically, so today, I mean, software is the big thing in technology today. Why is software the big thing? Because it's what allows you to create something from nothing. Because software allows your imagination to become reality. So you have a basic computer, you can now use it for several things. So you realize that software trumps everything. And if we were to talk about a catalyst, like you said when we started for national development and technology, there's a whole lot that software should do. And if you take a look at smart nations of the world, that's how wealth is created. I mean, so take a look at very typical ecosystems that you know about in the US, for example. Now just take a look at the list of the most successful, the richest people in the world, and you realize that their business is purely software. But software on its own doesn't do anything. There has to be a national strategy for the adoption of software. So, because software can be adopted to pretty much every aspect of our lives. For example, Channels Television, you guys have used software extensively. I saw you using virtual reality in your program. That's huge. You were able to bring somebody from somewhere into your studio and the person appeared in your studio as if she was live. That's all software. So what you have done is applied software to your business. Now, software can be applied to pretty much every business in the world. So what nations need to do is understand what their own strategy is and then decide how they want to make software big. Because in this, software can be the biggest thing in anything.
All right, that brings us to the issue of local content.
Yes, please.
Right. Where are we in terms of local content, talking about software development now?
Well, I like the question because there's a lot of talk about it. There's NoTap, for example. There are even bills that I've heard about, local content bills. I mean, but again, same thing that I would say is we hear so much about these issues. But personally, I wish I could see a lot more. So let me explain the way I see today, for example, what I know. And I really do hope I'm wrong, but I know I'm not wrong. So NoTap has rules. NoTap means National Office for Technology Acquisition, and I don't even know what the P means, but it's talking about acquisition. But essentially what they want to do is to ensure that a whole lot of work that has to do with software is maintained locally. But how are they doing it? They are following the money, which is in itself is not really bad. So they maintain that for every software project that comes internationally, a certain percentage of it must be given to the local players. All right, but that in itself will be good. However, there's a way monies can be given to people for doing nothing, which is purely rent. And if you take a look at our society today, it's unfortunate to say that a lot of things that are happening in Nigeria is rent, including oil that we are doing. And so what then happens is that because the original owner of the intellectual property knows that I have to pay 30% to a Nigerian entity, what does it do? It's very simple. He just calculates how much he wants to make and says that that is 70% of what he wants to make and divides the amount by 0.7. And the resultant impact of that is that the price increases. All right, so at the end of the day, the original owner of the software still does the job, but pays somebody 30% of that. So that person has virtually enjoyed rent. But ordinarily speaking, that's not the intention. The intention is to allow Nigerians to have the skill and capacity. And ordinarily speaking, we should have allowed a situation whereby within, say, a period of 3 to 6 years, we should be able to have a successful import substitution. And I have always been an advocate of that. That listen, we don't even need to do too many things internationally. We can really start from import substitution. Why? Because if you take a look at our import dependency on technology, it's very, very high. I mean, look at what we are doing in oil and gas. Look at even agriculture that we're talking about. Look at education. There's a whole lot that we could do by just merely substituting those imports. We will create capacity, we will create wealth, we will create employment, and then finally we'll create intellectual property which becomes sellable to the rest of the world.
Now, looking at some of these challenges you have reeled out here, we have companies such as System Spec,
Yes.
that has kind of proven itself, as local firm in that area. How were they able to do that?
Yeah, again, so quite a number of firms are doing well. But again, if you take a look at all of them, they are doing well, not because of government policies. They are doing well in spite of government policies. And so you can imagine a number of these organizations. I mean, like I say, it's like you are going on a journey. And because you did 500 yards or you walked 800 meters, you are being applauded when your colleagues are already. But a whole lot would have happened better had we had a national strategy and were we ready to do the work that we should do.
And have you, ISPON as a group, have you tried to liaise with the government in terms of, as in, what kind of national strategies should be put out?
Yes, so that's my job as president of ISPON, to engage. And so for ISPON is 20 years old, so I'm only the 5th president. And from time to time, we have these roundtables, we talk about this. But like I keep saying, it's not beans, it's hard work. And some of these issues we are discussing also require continuity because, see, some of the things you do, the results only come out a few years later. So it's necessary for us to understand that we are not expecting quick fixes. But when you have a nation that's a rich nation, naturally, because all money is coming out of the ground, they don't like to do heavy liftings. And these are the challenges I see.
Yeah. You did mention capacity building, which is, of course, one of the key areas. What is ISPON doing in this regard to help in capacity building?
So when I became president of ISPON, I said I have only one agenda, and that agenda is capacity building. And so when we talk about capacity building, which is very interesting, it's a very interesting term when we talk about capacity building. And what does that mean? Helping people learn, helping people develop, and helping people grow. But there's only so much that we can do. So when we talk about capacity building, meaning that you help, even you go to the tertiary institutions, and even if you did very well, you back up to secondary institutions, you look at startups, and you help people do some things. But you see, there's only so much you can do. People can have the knowledge. People might, until they have an environment where they can showcase their God-given talent, where they can actually actualize the skills that they have learned, then everything becomes head knowledge, and you do not really see productivity. And so it's important that, yes, we keep doing that. And so many shows are coming on. You see many young people all the time having several tech shows, and all about sharing knowledge, all about being able to do things. And pretty much you see that everything that is capable of being done outside of Nigeria has been done. Take a look at companies like Andela, who are grooming young software engineers and training them, developing them to world-class standards. So all this is happening. But the issues are, what are we doing nationally to make these talents become kinetic?
Have there been any grants, towards capacity building, really?
Well, so it's a question that depends on who is answering it. So if you ask the government will tell you that, oh yes, NITDA has grants for people to go have PhDs or advanced or masters in computer sciences and stuff like that. So you're going to likely hear that kind of thing, and that will be correct. But for me, I am more interested in not just putting monies after things, in getting solutions outside of the box. Because it's not just about throwing money for somebody to go and do a PhD in computer science. What does that amount to? How many PhDs do we really require to do things? What we require are people that have skills to develop and come up with solutions to even starting from our contemporary challenges. And you used an example, the elections. That's huge. INEC spent, is it 240 something million or billion naira? Billion naira? How much of that went into technology? And how much of that technology is homegrown? That's huge. So you look at, if we had decided that we wanted to take only 15% of that to developing electioneering technology that is homegrown, that's sufficient to catalyze the industry. We talk about agriculture as well. So much money is being spent in that regard. Well, people say, well, I mean, depending on who again is speaking, Nigeria is now perhaps the largest rice producer. That's not jabbing to anything to me, because if you listen to what Israel is doing, for example, Israel is very arid. Their grounds are rocks. But look at what they are doing, precision agriculture. What does that mean? Big data, connectivity, artificial intelligence. It's all technology. What are we doing about it? We're still doing subsistence farming? That's got to be a joke. If we had allowed technology to play major roles in this, what happens is that we develop skills, we develop capacity, we develop products, we create wealth, we create employment.
All right. Well, you've always identified lack of government policy as being responsible for kind of brain drain in information technology. What kind of policy direction would you like to see the new administration of the re-elected President Buhari, come up with towards driving the growth of this sector?
Good. So, I mean, first of all, brain drain is not necessarily bad. So let's get that right. Because brain drain sometimes might be the gateway to capacity development. But I'm saying that after a while, if you are smart, you need to use reverse brain drain to develop your society. And so my own advice to, even this administration was, look, what we need to do is internalize wealth in technology. the ideas that we are doing today, where our startups are being bought up by foreign companies, it doesn't matter how anybody feels about it. It is wrong. What we need to do is create mega IT firms in Nigeria who have exits in the capital market and give them capacity to be able to acquire these startups so that the wealth of these startups remain in this country.
All right. Now, looking at other African countries, how would you compare them with Nigeria? For instance, Kenya.
Yes.
For instance.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you take a look at other African countries, and it's a bit difficult to say whether Egypt is African or not African.
Middle East, yeah.
You know, so I won't discuss Egypt, but I'll rather discuss countries like Kenya and Rwanda. Watch out for Rwanda. And things are really happening in Rwanda. As a matter of fact, only recently, CC Hub, which started in Nigeria, has gone to Rwanda to set up. So what you see in those places is that even particularly Kenya, their IT ecosystem seems to be a lot, well, there's a lot of buzz, there's a lot of focus, particularly by foreigners, to the IT ecosystem. I mean, take a look at the famous M-Pesa. Yesterday on your channel, or was it on CNN, that M-Pesa is now doing something with Safaricom for Ali with Ali. It
was actually on our channel.
It was on your channel. Okay, yes. So I saw that yesterday. So take a look at that. Now, I have gone to Kenya. I have business in Kenya. And I look at M-Pesa, beautiful product. But I'll tell you what, Nigerians are doing a lot more. Who's talking about it? So again, the narratives. Who is telling the stories? How are we telling the stories? How are we positioning ourselves? Because you see, in terms of capacity and capability, I can tell you there's no country like Nigeria in Africa, to start with, I'm sure of that. Perhaps there's no country like Nigeria in the world. Perhaps you want to compare us to India. But Indians are very smart mathematically, but nobody jokes with Nigerians when it comes to creativity. Now, creativity is the mother and bedrock of technology.
Right. Okay, let's look at talking about gender gap here now. And I know that the gap between men and women in the industry seems to be widening. How can we get more women in Africa, you know, particularly, not just Nigeria, in Africa, into IT entrepreneurship?
Is it widening? Yes, it's not wide. I won't say it's widening. You can say it's wide. You can say it's wide, but widening. Because I did some work, some scholastic work as well on IT entrepreneurship. Okay. And that's actually my passion, IT entrepreneurship. Yes, the gap seems to be wide. We have much more men in the field than women. But again, that speaks to a lot of things because certain factors affect these things. What are faith, our belief systems, and stuff like that. So if you take a look at even the demographics, population of Nigeria, we tend to have a lot more, a higher population in the north than in the south. But again, if you want to do IT entrepreneurship, clearly a basic norm is education. You need reasonable education in science technology. And you need reasonable, well, my study says business schools are very important factor, significant factor. So what you realize that in the north, the level of education in the north still needs to develop. So that in itself is a factor of the gap. But if you take a look at the industry, there are women who are in the industry that are doing pretty well in technology. There are quite a number of them, women professors of technology. I know quite a number of them. And even in the industry, you see people like Funke Opeke, who is the CEO of Menwon. You see people like Omobola Johnson, who was MD of Accenture and became minister. You see people like Juliet. So quite a number of women are there. Look, see, in terms of the capacity of the women, absolutely you have to respect them. They have everything it takes. And remember that technology is not a game of lifting heavy things. It's a game of exercising the brain. And it is clear that the women folk have equal, probably better capacity than the men folk. So what we really need to do is these issues of demographics, getting people, particularly in the north, to be able to step up the education. And much more importantly, everybody is following the money. The question is how much money are people making from technology? Isn't it easier to go and sell oil? Isn't it easier to be a government contractor, to do nothing sometimes, than to come and do the hard work of being in technology, spend a lot of time researching to come up with products? So once we take care of that, then I think we will have a lot of women coming into it.
We hope so. Anyway, thank you very much for your time.
Very great pleasure. Thank you very
And
much.
I've been speaking to Dr. Yedeo Kirimi, who is the president of Institute of Software Practitioners of Management.